The forgotten room. The house stood at the end of a long uphill path. Its silhouette, a jagged, crumbling shape, majestically rose against the evening sky. The manor, once proud and looming atop a hill above the village, had been forgotten by time. Ivy crept along the walls, windows were shattered, and the roof sagged under the weight of years without care. But to Matt and Eliza, this house, despite its dilapidated state, was the beginning of their dream. "Don't worry, we'll fix it up," Matt had said confidently as they stepped inside for the first time. Dust covered the entire house as the blanket of the age. The wooden floors were reminiscing about their better days as they groaned beneath the couple's feet. And even though everything smelled of rot, there was something captivating about the place, a beauty lost beneath layers of decay. Eliza, however, was less convinced. She eyed the cracked ceilings and broken windows with suspicion. "This is going to take forever. We will never finish it before we die." The first week was grueling. Every room needed attention, and the wind blew constantly through gaps in the walls. It was unbearably cold inside, but still, they had faith, and the hard work started to pay off. The house was slowly but surely coming together. Each evening, they would collapse in their temporary bedroom. They were too tired to talk, but still felt like they had company, the house. It seemed like it was talking to them through the eerie creaks and groans of the old structure. One evening, as Matt wandered into the bedroom after a long day of work, he paused. He felt something strange. A soft, cool breeze brushed against his skin. He turned toward the far wall. "Eliza?" he called. His wife came out of the kitchen. "What is it now?" she asked. "I feel a breeze here," Matt replied. Eliza rolled her eyes. "Matt, I'm telling you, the walls are in a horrible condition. No wonder there's a breeze." Matt shook his head. "No, this feels different. I think it's coming from inside the house." Eliza frowned. She was still very annoyed, but not that much. She started to be a little curious. "Inside?" Matt moved closer to the wall. He started to inspect it thoroughly. The surface was painted a pale blue, much like the other walls, but as he looked more carefully, he noticed something. The shade was slightly off. It was subtle, but this part of the wall seemed newer, fresher than the others. Without another word, Matt grabbed a crowbar from the pile of tools they'd left nearby. Eliza watched. She was suspicious, but also curious. "Matt, you're going to destroy the place even more than it already is," she said. "That's exactly what I'm aiming for right now," Matt replied. It didn't take long before the bricks fell inward and revealed a small, hidden room. Matt stepped back. For a while, he couldn't breathe properly. His breath was catching in his throat as dust billowed from the opening. Inside, the air was thick and stale. A few moments later, the faint outline of forgotten furniture became visible. A small table in the center, a broken chair, and something else. "Eliza," Matt whispered, "you have to see this." Together, they ventured into the room. In the corner, resting against the wall, was a human skeleton. Its bones had already yellowed with age, but there was no doubt that they were for sure human bones. In its hands, it was holding an old, leather-bound diary. On the table, there was a stack of old newspapers. Eliza came forward and picked up the nearest newspaper. The barely legible headline read, "Local man disappeared without a trace." She glanced at the next one. "Village girl vanishes during harvest festival." One by one, she flipped through the stack. Each article tells a similar story. A person mysteriously disappeared and was never found. Matt noticed something strange. Each newspaper was accompanied by a hand-drawn sketch. Matt knew that he had seen these sketches before. But where? Then it clicked. "Eliza, these are ground plans of the house and its surroundings," Matt exclaimed. "Are you sure?" Eliza asked. "Of course I am. I know them by heart from the reconstruction." Curious, Matt started studying the maps. He noticed that each had a small X marked in different locations. These are the places where they went missing," Eliza murmured, her voice shaky. "No," Matt corrected. "These are the places where they were buried." He knelt beside the skeleton, his eyes drawn to the leather diary. His hands trembled as he opened it. The pages were filled with neat writing. It was an account of the man's life. The further Matt read, the darker it became. The man had been luring victims to the house for years. In the beginning, he simply pretended to be their friend, but then he murdered them and buried them in the garden, under trees, by the edge of the forest, anywhere. But after some time, this wasn't good enough for him. The diary was full of more and more perverted rituals performed on the victims before they were terminated. His family had suspected something was wrong, but hadn't realized the full extent of his crimes until they discovered the newspapers, the maps, and the truth hidden within his diary. They found out, Matt whispered, his family. Eliza's eyes were wide, her face pale. What did they do? Matt flipped to the final pages. They found out. I was always cautious, but they found the maps and the papers. That can't be possible. I kept them in the secret hole in the wall. Nobody knew about it. But no, that is not possible. It was definitely my fault. I forgot to hide them. How did this happen? I don't know. But then it was quick. They put me to sleep. Then I woke up here, closed within the walls. Nobody will find me here. Definitely not alive. But they don't know. They didn't find everything. And they never will. Too bad I can't tell them the whole truth. They only know half of it. Matt's gaze fell to the skeleton once more. They bricked him in, he said. He was still alive when they walled him up. A chilling silence filled the room, broken only by the distant creaking of the house settling around them. Eliza wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the warmth. But what is the whole truth? Eliza asked. What did they not know? What is he talking about? We need to leave, Eliza whispered. We can't stay here. Matt nodded. But then something gnawed at him. He noticed something odd as he clutched the diary, flipping through its brittle pages. Eliza, some of the pages are missing. Eliza froze. Matt held the diary out, showing her the jagged edges where several pages had been torn out. They glanced around the room, searching for the missing pages, but they were nowhere to be found. I don't get it, Eliza murmured. Maybe they fell somewhere else in the house? Maybe, Matt said, but the uneasy feeling in his chest persisted. But it makes no sense. They have to be in this room, but where? They were searching for another hour, but then they eventually gave up. They couldn't sleep that night. Matt lay awake, listening to every creak and groan of the old house. His mind was racing with thoughts of the diary's missing pages and the forgotten horrors buried in the garden. The next morning, Matt woke before dawn, driven by a need for answers. He decided to head into the village, hoping someone might know more about the house's history. Eliza, I'll be back soon, he whispered as he left. The cold morning air bit at his skin as he descended the winding path from the manor to the village below. As he was walking down the hill, Matt noticed an older man trudging up the path in the opposite direction. The man's back was bent with age, and his steps were slow and deliberate. Matt gave a polite nod but didn't pay much attention. There were many paths leading up the hill. He could be going anywhere. Matt arrived at the village and asked around about the previous inhabitants of the manor. Initially, the responses were vague, filled with muttered superstitions and averted gazes. But after some persistence, an elderly man finally spoke up. There was a family that lived there years ago, the old man said. A mother, a father, and two brothers, James and Thomas. But it got strange after a while. The parents and the older brother vanished one day, just like that. People assumed it was some kind of tragedy, that they'd all been caught in some accident, but no bodies were ever found. Matt felt a cold chill creeping up his spine. What about the younger brother? Thomas. He left not long after the others disappeared. People say it broke him, but here's the strange part. He comes back every year around this time. Heads up to that house. Folks around here say he's searching for the bodies, but no one really knows. They think he's gone mad, driven by guilt or grief. It's why no one dares go near the place. Matt froze. His thoughts began to race, pieces of a horrible puzzle clicking into place. The parents knew about James, but they knew only half the truth. Does that mean the brothers were in on it together? His stomach dropped as he suddenly realized who the old man was, the one he'd seen on the path earlier that morning, the younger brother. He had been returning to the manor, as he did every year. Eliza, panic surged as he bolted from the village, sprinting back up the hill toward the house. His feet pounded the earth and his heart hammered in his chest. When he reached the manor, the front door was open. The house felt eerily silent. Eliza, he called. No answer. He searched frantically, and when he entered their temporary bedroom, his heart sank. The bed was empty. His wife was gone. But there in the far wall was something even more horrifying. a gaping hole in the plaster. Matt rushed to the secret room. His breath caught in his throat as he entered. On the old table there was a fresh pile of articles, newly added. Along with them were the missing pages from the diary. Matt unfolded them and began to read. The torn-out entries revealed the whole truth. The brothers had been doing it together, luring victims, hiding the bodies. But fear of being caught had driven Thomas to turn on his brother. He had framed him, ensuring James would take the fall. But he hadn't expected their parents to brick him up alive. Thomas had tried to free him, sneaking into the room after their parents had gone, but he was too late. When he finally removed the bricks, his brother was already dead. Racked with guilt, fear, and anger, Thomas had killed their parents. How could they do such a horrible thing to his brother? Unable to bear with the truth, he removed the last pages, accusing him of the horrible betrayal from the diary. He had resealed the room, hoping to bury the past. But the weight of his actions haunted him, drawing him back to the house year after year. Matt's eyes skimmed the last entry. James had written that Thomas would continue what they had started. There were more victims to claim. And then at the bottom of the stack, Matt saw a freshly drawn map. His hands shook as he realized the map was of the garden outside. A new X marked a spot beneath one of the old oak trees. His heart raced as he ran outside, following the map to the fresh grave. He was gasping for air as he reached the marked spot. At the bottom of a shallow hole, there was Eliza. Her pale skin was so white and innocent in the morning light. "Eliza!" Matt shouted. He jumped into the grave. He touched her cold skin with shaking hands. She wasn't breathing. Tears blurred his vision, but before he could even process the horror of what had happened, a voice drifted through the trees. "Ready to join your wife?"